Regular viewers of our channel will know that throughout the war so far, we've seen a series of great military blunders by the Austro-Hungarian Empire, including huge failures against both the Russians and the Serbs. But blame for none of these can be laid at the feet of perhaps the greatest Austrian military leader of the war, Svetozar Borojevic von Bojna. I'm Indy Nidell. Welcome to our Great War Bio series, Who Did What in World War I, today featuring Svetozar Borojevic von Bojna. He was born in the village of Umetic in what is now Croatia, December 13, 1856, but was then part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. His father was a soldier and little is known of his mother. Now, his father was a Serb, but Borojević would state later in numerous letters that he considered himself a Croat and Croatia his homeland. At the age of 9, he went away to military boarding school and followed that with military high school and infantry cadet school. At 19, he was promoted to lieutenant and first saw action in 1878 during the Austro-Hungarian occupation of Bosnia and Herzegovina. He was also decorated there for the first time. In 1881, he became Oberleutnant, and in 1886, Hauptmann, or captain. He spent a few years lecturing at a military academy before serving various postings throughout the empire, rising to major, lieutenant colonel, and finally colonel, Oberst, in 1897. After that, he was stationed in Prague, where he remained until 1904, when he became Major General. Postings in Zagreb and Košice followed, as did further promotions to Field Marshal Lieutenant and General of the Infantry. Just so you know, the speed of his rise through the ranks was unusual in general and almost unheard of for a Slav, and when he reached the rank of Field Marshal during the war, he became the first and only Southern Slav in the entire history of the Austro-Hungarian Empire to reach that rank. So, the war. General Borojević was sent to fight on the Eastern Front. His first noticeable contribution was in October 1914, during the first siege of Przemysl, when his relief force reached the fortress, causing the Russians to retreat across the river San. After later withdrawing to Limanova in the Western Carpathians, his forces blocked the Russian advance in December and caused them to retreat again, taking heavy casualties. Throughout that winter, his Third Army took part in the repeated, disastrous Winter Carpathian offensives, as ordered by Austrian Army Chief of Staff Konrad von Hötzendorf. The Austrian forces were ill-prepared and ill-equipped for winter mountain warfare, and took huge casualties as the Russians gained ground all winter. All of that territory was soon retaken in May during the early stages of the Austro-German Gorlice-Tarnów offensive, which kicked the Russians out of Hungary. But Borojević wouldn't see much of that offensive, for he was transferred to the Italian front May 25th, and it was there that he really showed his skills. He was given command of the Fifth Army, later known as the Isonzo Army, and his first task was to organize his defenses. Now, Konrad, his superior, wanted him to allow the Italians to cross the mountains into Carinthia and Styria and to defend there in the valley of the Drava and Sava rivers. Borojević was completely against this, as he hated the idea of letting the Italians into Slavic lands, especially land near the heart of the empire and within striking distance of Vienna. This also made Borojević popular with the Slovenes, who didn't like the idea of the war taking place on their territory either. Borojević won out, and the front was set up further west on the Isonzo River, known locally as the Socha River, and his attitude toward what he had to do was defense, defense, defense. Losing the Italian front would likely lose the war for the empire, but his position initially was far from enviable. Most of his time there, he had fewer troops than Italian Chief of Staff Luigi Cadorna had in his armies. Cadorna also had more guns and by 1916 better equipment in general. But Borojević had the high ground and the territorial advantage. It also helped that Cadorna repeated the same mistakes again and again, attacking tactically unimportant positions, failing to coordinate artillery with infantry, and above all, relying on the bravery of his men to win battles and ordering them to pursue objectives that they were physically incapable of doing. As you're going to find out when you follow our show, there would be 12 battles of the Isonzo River, and Borojević's greatest success was holding the line through the first 11 of them over 2.5 years, before the great combined Austro-German offensive of the 12th, also known as the Battle of Caporetto, pushed back the Italians over 100 kilometers and nearly reached Venice. For stopping the repeated Italian offensives, Borojević was repeatedly promoted, finally reaching Field Marshal February 1st, 1918. He could be, though, at times, very difficult to have as a superior officer. He could be arrogant, and he was very meticulous to details, but he expected everyone below him to be the same. He could not stand incompetence and hated senseless demands, like the Carpathian winter offensives, and was in many ways the opposite of Konrad von Hötzendorf. From those offensives, Borojević became skeptical of bold offensive moves and tried to conserve his forces as much as possible. But because of his arrogance and obstinacy, he was nicknamed thick-headed Croat by some of his men, who often had difficulty expressing their opinion since he reminded them always of who was in command. But he was diligent and observant, and by the later stages of the war was no longer the thick-headed Croat, but the Lion of the Isonzo. He received many decorations and honors during the course of the war. But post-war, things took a decided turn for the worse for Svetozar Borojevic von Bojna. He had been a hero with statues built in his honor during the war, but he found himself now being accused of wasting the lives of the southern Slavic men in the defense of a rotten empire, a prison of nations. His military career came to an end. His son drowned, and his property was confiscated by the newly formed Kingdom of Serbs, Croats, and Slovenes, which would soon be known as Yugoslavia. This confiscation included his bank account, his decorations, and his personal belongings. He fell into poverty and lived on a small stipend from the military order of Maria Theresa. He tried and failed to gain citizenship in both the new kingdom and the new Austrian Republic, who refused his offers of service and his requests for a pension. His former fame and allegiance to the Austro-Hungarian Empire made him persona non grata and a man without a country, though he lived in Austria. He wrote a series of letters to his friend Slavko Kvaternik, who served in the Yugoslav army, and from them you can see his emotional descent into instability and depression. Some of those letters are in the comments section below. In his last letter he wrote, "I will make my final attempt and ask Laginia that he, as the highest representative of my homeland, does something about my pension in Belgrade. If this fails, then I don't bear responsibility for that which will eventually follow." He eventually gave up all hope of seeing his homeland again, and the Lion of the Isonzo died of a stroke May 23, 1920, and was buried with no military honors and only his wife by his side. It's kind of sad that such a historical figure should be erased, but because of the complicated history between Serbs and Croats, the way in which the Croats remember Austria-Hungary and Yugoslavia, and his Serbian family, it was never politically useful to remember Borojević, and his story is a reminder that the horrors of a war never remain within the boundaries of that war. Its effects are long-lasting, and make no mistake, the Great War did kill Svetozar Borojevic von Bojna in the end. Thank you, Mladen Mirat, for helping us with the research for this episode. If you want to find out more about von Bojna's superior, Konrad von Hötzendorf, you can click right here for a bio special about him. And for more pictures from the Italian front, you can like us on Facebook and follow us on Instagram. Don't forget to subscribe. See you next time.